Hello everyone, thank you for your attention. My name is Jordan Kessel and I'm from Boca Raton, Florida, and I'm going to be a senior in my high school next year. And what I wanted to get out of this SILS program was a way to implement leadership in my community in order to solve an environmental problem. So today I'd like to talk to you all about carbon dioxide emissions and the effects they can have on the environment. So as you can see by this graph, CO2 emissions have been increasing rapidly since the mid-1900s and even the early 1900s. Since the second industrial revolution, changes in technologies have had a profound impact on the atmosphere. They have led to bigger industries and more transportation, which account for 40% of our CO2 emissions. So why does this matter? Why should we care? How does this affect us as humans? Well, I've listed 7 aspects of the planet that are greatly affected by the rise in CO2 emissions. I'll start by talking about agriculture. Increases in CO2 emissions make it more arduous to grow crops, and it has a detrimental impact on crop yields. For example, in 2008, the Mississippi River flooded just before the harvest period, which led to a loss of $8 billion in crops. And another fact is, in Africa, crop yields are expected to be reduced by 50% by 2020, which is in less than 10 years. Also, fungi, pests, diseases, they all thrive under CO2 emissions. Livestock are also affected by CO2 emissions. One heat wave resulting from the increase can kill 5,000 animals. And like I mentioned before, diseases thrive, so animals will be wiped out. CO2 emissions also affect ecosystems. Right now, 200 species a day go extinct, and a big reason for that is the increase in carbon in the atmosphere. Species that are greatly affected are mountain species that live in mountain habitats, such as the pika, right up there, and species that live in sea ice habitats, such as polar bears. And CO2 emissions kind of have an indirect effect on polar bears. They disrupt food chains. So, for example, as CO2 emissions rise, the acidity in the oceans increase, which kills algae, and as algae decrease, zooplankton decrease. As zooplankton decrease, cod decrease. Therefore, polar bears eat cod, so the numbers of polar bears will decrease. And coastlines are also greatly affected. There is water pollution, shoreline erosion, and especially in Australia and Wales. And also sea level rises have begun to increase. For example, especially in areas around the Gulf Coast, such as Louisiana. Louisiana has seen sea level rise 8 inches over the last 50 years. And areas of New York City are projected to be underwater, and many landmasses have already sunk. Forests are also greatly impacted. Forests are important because they provide wildlife, recreation, clean water, and habitats for organisms. And wildfires caused by CO2 emissions, such as the ones in Colorado, California, New Mexico, they've all wiped out millions of acres of forests. And CO2 emissions also cause insect outbreaks. An example is the pine beetle right here has wiped out 1.5 million acres of forest in Colorado. And next, CO2 emissions also affect human health, to put it on a more personal, selfish level. 55,000 people died from the 2010 Russian wildfires, and 1,888 people died from Hurricane Katrina. Not only are deaths a cause of increase in CO2 emissions, but also stomach illness, chronic lung disease, and even depression. So a lot of impacts on human health. CO2 emissions also affect transportation, railways, air traffic, marine travel. Ice roads in Alaska are going to be sunk, and those roads are important for connecting northern communities in Alaska. And also, as the sea levels rise, the clearance level for ships crossing the bridges will decrease, so those ships will go to waste. And CO2 emissions also affect water resources. Here is a picture of Lake Powell in June 2002. As you can see, the water availability has decreased in less than a year. And a lot of the impacts of CO2 emissions are sort of interconnected. An example being a wildfire. A wildfire will affect human health, it will affect our agriculture, it will affect our ecosystems and our resources. Drought also affects many aspects caused by CO2 emissions. So how do we approach this problem? Well, talking to industries and corporations and asking them to cut down on their energy emissions, and asking politicians to talk to executives to pass environmentally friendly laws has been attempted before, and it's very difficult to persuade their opinions, and it's proved unsuccessful. So I believe it's up to us, it's up to smaller communities to make a difference in their lives, and the only way to do that is to educate people about what's going on, tell them about the effects CO2 emissions have on the environment, spread awareness, join a bigger cause, and ultimately create more leaders. We want other people to start projects in their communities as well, not just my project. What I wanted to do is to start a carbon dioxide emissions awareness club in my high school. My high school is huge. There are 3,000 kids in the high school. My high school releases a lot of CO2 in the atmosphere with all the kids, so I want to spread awareness. Now, the only way to achieve that goal is to educate the students about what's going on. Before I came to this program, I had no idea about climate change or anything. I'm sure a lot of students feel the same right now. But I don't want to just tell them about the harmful effects of CO2 emissions. We need to tell them that there are ways to reduce CO2 emissions. We need to create hope, because if there is no hope, there's no point in joining a cause. Also engage the students, give them responsibilities so they have a feeling of trust and autonomy, which will help create solidarity and will make the cause bigger. Next, this will take about, let's say, a week to educate, and then 2 weeks to engage the students next, and then finally engaging the science department to get a sponsor for the club. Teachers are very busy during the school year, so I'd say about a month and a half to do that. And then finally speaking to Mrs. Francis, who is the dean at my high school, my dean, and she's in charge of deciding whether clubs go through or not. So with all the solidarity and the power of numbers, she will be convinced to start the club. Tactics, social media, Facebook, everyone has a Facebook. Even if you don't have a Facebook, you know someone who has a Facebook. Now, creating a Facebook group page with posts of videos such as, personally, I feel the story of stuff and the tipping point are very informative and shocking videos that will captivate the Facebook viewers. Flyers around school, statistics about Russian wildfires or Hurricane Katrina and the causes of natural disasters. Finally, tabling at big events such as football games to create more solidarity, create a bigger cause and more people to join. Petitioning is very important to convince the science teachers at the science department to sponsor the club, because they will see that students are interested in the club and don't want to start just so it looks good on their college resume, that they're serious about the issue. And finally, an interview with, like I said before, my dean, Mrs. Francis, who will be convinced with all the numbers I have and all the support. Assessment. Now, in order to find out if people are reducing their carbon footprints, it's important to do surveys and interviews, see if they have been turning the lights off, turning off appliances, using public transportation, just to see if their daily habits have changed after joining this club and learning more about how CO2 emissions impact climate change and drought and cause deaths. And an interesting website that I've learned about is myfootprint.org. And basically, what you do is you type in your daily lifestyle, the size of your house, how often you use public transportation or how often you drive a car, and it basically tells you how many Earths you would need if everyone on the planet lived your lifestyle. So if everyone on the planet lived your lifestyle and you need 5 Earths, you're not doing a great job of lowering your carbon footprint. So you want to be at 1 Earth, ideally. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Do you have any environmental clubs already in place?
No, there's not a single environmental club.
How many kids would you want within that first period where you're
engaging
engaging students? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say most clubs usually have about 20 kids at the very first meeting, but I believe that more kids will show up around 40 if they learn about what's going on and see the videos on Facebook. So I'd say about 40. Yeah.
What would you say your community's disposition toward CO2 emissions and climate change is right now?
Well, Boca Raton is a very densely packed area, so a lot of cars on the roads all the time, and and the public transportation system barely has any people on it, and just over consuming. Boca is kind of it's a very luxury place. Everyone wants the best clothes, and it's kind of like, I don't want to sound, it's kind of flamboyant, flashy. So just to change their habits and the way they consume products. Yes.
How are you going to share information with people so that they can identify with it and feel like it matters to them personally?
Right. Well, if they see deaths, if they see numbers of deaths from, for example, like hurricanes, it's very sad, and they will be able to, it'll connect on them on a personal level if they've ever had a loved one die, so they will want to change their habits in order to help the cause.
All right, thank you, Jordan.